Chapter 39. Hezekiah reveals riches to Babylon. Isaiah was not afraid to speak truth to power. Here in chapter 39, not only does he criticize the one Jewish king who actually valued his counsel, he then makes that criticism permanent by putting it in a book of scripture that will be studied for thousands of years. Why would he do this? Clearly because the Lord directed him to. For this chapter also serves as a prophecy for the great and marvelous events of the last days. Merodach-Baladan was a Babylonian king who had just broken free of the Assyrian yoke. But the Assyrian army was still a threat, and the Babylonian king was looking for allies to assist him should the Assyrians attack again. He had heard not only that King Hezekiah had been miraculously healed and that the sun had gone backward as a sign of his healing, but just as important, he had heard that King Hezekiah had resisted an Assyrian invasion and had caused 185,000 deaths of the enemy in one night. These were high qualifications for any Babylonian ally. In fact, by virtue of sending gifts to Hezekiah, Merodach-Baladan may have actually been proposing that Hezekiah become the leader of a new confederacy against Assyria. After all, this man could control the sun and elements of the earth. Why not vast armies? And Hezekiah was glad to receive these Babylonians, and perhaps sensing a chance to become the supreme ruler of this new confederacy, he showed off his financial and military might. Well, why would he fall for this temptation? Perhaps, like David, he had a moment of weakness. After all the violence and misery that had befallen his country, it probably felt good to have a friend. And also, we know that even the latter-day David, of whom Hezekiah is a type, will also harbor weaknesses before being perfected, even the weaknesses of covetousness and of being willful before God. Only the Lord himself lived in this world without sin. So then Isaiah questioned Hezekiah about this lapse in judgment, and Hezekiah freely admitted, "There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them." By the way, the word shew is an archaic word that is pronounced show and means to reveal something. Once again, Isaiah was not afraid to speak truth to power. "Behold," he said, "the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord." All that Hezekiah has, all that he has inherited and all he has built up will be lost to the Babylonians. He never should have allowed himself to be so flattered by their attention. He never should have taken his eye off God and gazed upon the temptations of a false friend. And now, because he has done this, all will be lost. Even his own posterity will suffer, when he has some. Of course, he had no posterity at this point, as he was still single and childless. But at least now he knew that he would yet be blessed with children, though again, they would suffer. We might note that this is the first specific prophecy in the Bible that the Jews would yet be conquered and carried away into Babylon. As it turned out, his future son, Manasseh, would be taken captive into Babylon, though he would return and try to repair some of the wrongs he had earlier committed. But in a much larger event, and in a much larger way, most of the Jewish nation, including the house of David, would be carried away to Babylon about 100 years later, in the days of King Zedekiah. Although there is no indication that Hezekiah's son, Manasseh, was ever made a eunuch in Babylon, later generations of Hezekiah's posterity probably were, as they suffered in captivity for generations. Hearing all this, Hezekiah accepts this indictment, saying, "Good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken." Then he adds an interesting postscript, "For there shall be peace and truth in my days." It's almost as if Hezekiah was grateful that when the penalty for his actions came due, he wouldn't be around anymore. Again, we know that all that Isaiah spake shall be. In the last days there may be some leaders who will try to make alliances with the powers of Babylon, both foreign and domestic. These powers may even demand compromises to God's law. To the extent leaders do this, they and their people will suffer in Babylon. All of this is discussed in greater detail in the book, The Words of Isaiah, which you can find at the website, thewordsofisaiah.com. I'm Curtis Taylor with the Words of Isaiah.